Hi, this is Nick Brandon from tecwork. I was asked to do a presentation by a Quango, for want of a better word, recently on cyber security and cyber essentials. So I thought I'd share this presentation with you guys, and hopefully you'll find it useful. So here we go. So, Cyber Essentials Cybersecurity Overview. A few stats on cyber attacks, the worrying reality. This is from the government's own website and was published recently in a report. So 4 in 10 businesses and a quarter of charities report having cybersecurity attack breaches or attacks in the last 12 months. With the pandemic, the risk levels potentially higher than ever because businesses are finding it harder to administer security measures because people have started working at home and remotely. And fewer businesses now than last year are actually deploying security monitoring tools or taking any form of user monitoring. Around a quarter of these businesses experience these kind of attacks at least once a week. The most common attacks by far are phishing attacks, which is where you get an email with an attachment which has malicious software in it or something similar, and also impersonation attacks. And among 39% of businesses and 26% of charities that identify a breach or attack, 1 in 5 end up losing money, data, or other assets. And we see this quite regularly in our day-to-day work. Quite often the businesses we're dealing with for IT and telecoms, for example, we don't often, or sometimes we don't do their IT, and we just do their telecoms, and we seem to have things happening with those telecoms customers where we're not looking after their IT and they're getting attacked. And I'll cover some examples shortly. So what can you do? Well, the best thing you can possibly do is get accredited for Cyber Essentials, which is the UK government's scheme for deploying benchmark best practices in your business or organisation for protecting yourself. Another thing you could do is you could talk to your IT partner, your support person, or your IT support company, talk to them, assess your situation, ask them what they've done, assess their expertise, and move from there to take some action. Or at least to start with, what you could do is do some research yourself. You can probably, if you have the sort of time and skill set, take some precautions yourself, but it's always best to use an expert. And what we also find is sometimes, even if you've got a trusted IT partner, it's good to bring somebody else in that is Cyber Essentials experienced to audit what they've done. But we'll come on to that in a bit. So what is Cyber Essentials? Well, it's a self-assessment, basically. Normally, it's a 23-page questionnaire that's completed by an expert and then submitted to IASME for the rubber stamp. And the benefits are really, it's doing what it says on the tin. It's protecting your business, staff, customers, and suppliers from cyber attacks. It gives you free cyber insurance, which is useful. Also gives you the use of the Cyber Essentials logo on your marketing, which is great for business. Another unique selling point for you when you're pitching for sales. You get listed in the Cyber Essentials directory, so people can go and check you out. And you also get access potentially to government framework agreements, which some of which will actually state that you have to have Cyber Essentials accreditation. So that's the benefits and what it is. How do you get it? Well, normally you would have an initial discussion with an IT expert, ideally one that specialises in cyber security, not just a general IT company. They would normally do an audit, and then they come up with an action plan for required tasks to pass the accreditation, take the actions, and then submit the self-assessment questionnaire with all the answers ticked to IASME, the governing body. How much does it cost? Well, £300 is the cost for submitting the assessment, but the IT people that you get to assess you and audit you, they will tick what boxes they can, and then they'll highlight what boxes need to be ticked and what action needs to be taken for getting you there once the audit's been completed. So there'll probably be some costs which may be very low, or there may be a bit higher, which is largely the time required for the IT company to put in place those actions. But there may also be some upgrades of software and hardware and so on required. But we don't know what those will be until the audit's done. I'm going to cover briefly the areas of Cyber Essentials, but the assessment itself goes into a lot more detail than what I'm going to cover. So this is just a flavour. So you need to look at securing your internet connections. That will be your firewall. Normally for normal businesses and offices, we would recommend having a proper business class router and firewall rather than the free one that you sometimes get from your internet provider. And you may also have a firewall software device in your operating system, within Windows 10 or Windows 11 or your Mac operating system. And any device that connects to the internet should have to go through a firewall. That's a gimme. Your firewall access should have unique, hard to guess passwords, not the default ones. Because if they're default, that means anybody can get into them, which is a big problem. And they should be changed on a reasonably regular basis. And you need to ask yourself who else has access to this firewall and why. It should always be configured by an expert, and it should always be fully supported, not an old version, and it should be updated with the latest firmware. So that's what you need to look at with your internet connections. Then you need to look at your devices. When manufacturers supply hardware and software, normally it's supplied with an always on, open situation, which is not a good idea. So for instance, when we provide a new laptop for a customer, we will configure it and take off all the trash that's not required that comes with it. So disable and remove anything that isn't required, basically. And that goes for everything, really, on your devices. If there's stuff on your laptop or your machine that you don't use, just take it off, disable it, remove it. All devices and accounts should be password protected, of course. No default passwords being used. And it makes it easier if you use a password manager like LastPass, which has a very small cost to it and is worth looking at. Just makes it easier to manage and nice and secure. You should always use pins on your smartphone devices or touch/face ID. And this is a big one. You should always deploy, and if you haven't done this yet, you need to, two-factor authentication, or sometimes called multi-factor authentication. Very important. This basically means if somebody does get hold of your username and password for your system, they can't get any further because they're trying to access it from a new device which hasn't been used before. And if that happens and they're on their screen, wherever it is, and they try to access your system, you will get a text or with a code that you have to put in on your smartphone, or you would have to insert a code using your authenticator app on your smartphone. And of course, a hacker, wherever they are in the world, won't have your smartphone, hopefully, as well as your username and password. So that stops them getting any further. That's absolute gimme these days for cyber security. Controlling access, you should be restricting access to everything where possible for all users where they don't need access, basically. Do not use administrator access by default. So we go to customers sometimes where the businesses they're logging on as administrators. That's a big no-no. They don't need to be administrators. They're just users, and they should be treated as so, treated as such. If an attacker does get hold of administrator access on your network, they can cause a lot more damage. than if they have user access. So that's a good thing to bear in mind. And ask yourself who has access from outside to your network. Why do they have it? How is it secured? Very important. Then we talk about virus and malware protection. So malware is just a shortened word for malicious software. Normally we find this is in the form of ransomware these days, and I'll cover a real life example of that in a bit. So this basically deletes data and potentially deletes backups of your data and can make your system unusable, and you then have to pay a ransom to get your data back and make your system usable again. These cyber attacks often come in via an email as an infected attachment or a link to a malicious website, or even if you stick in a USB stick, it might have some malware on it. So you really need to regularly remind and train everybody that's in your organization to be vigilant and not to open emails just randomly whenever they come in. Set them up on a preview. If there's something that comes in that looks a bit weird or unexpected, hover over the from address and you can then see who it's from, because it can be made to look like it's from HSBC or something quite easily, unless you check it in more detail. Windows Defender is something that comes free with Windows, which is good. We also recommend you can add extra protection by using something like Bitdefender, and there's lots of them out there, but Bitdefender is what we use, and that's £2 a month, so very affordable, well worth the cost. Avoid connecting to public networks where if necessary. You can also deploy like an allowed list type policy or software restriction policy on your devices, so that users can't just add any old software onto their computers. Keeping everything updated is the last bit really to talk about. All phones, tablets, laptops and computers should be kept up to date with the very latest patches, updates. All the supported software levels should be in place. Install updates when asked and patches. And if you've got older stuff on your network, older machines, computers, phones, smartphones, software, operating systems, these really should be removed and replaced if they're no longer supported, because they represent a vulnerability. A few cautionary tales here. In my previous company, I had a customer where we did all their telecoms. When we started this business just nearly 5 years ago, I tried to speak to him for a few years and he never got back to me, which is weird. And then I found out, he contacted me and he said, "So sorry, I haven't been in touch. I've just spent 2 years rebuilding our data because we were forced to move very quickly, move office. We set up our internet connections with 4G connectivity rather than a proper direct fiber connection with proper firewalls and things, and they got hit with a ransomware attack. It destroyed their data. They were held to ransom. It also destroyed their backups, so they had to rebuild all of their data from scratch manually. This is quite a big business, 60 people, well established, and the guy who's their IT manager actually said to me, "Nick, I think at one stage I thought we were going to lose the business and go out of business." So this was massive for them. We also came across recently a manufacturing company of ours. We now do their IT, but the previous IT provider, they'd got Cyber Essentials Plus done for them, which is more invasive penetration testing version of Cyber Essentials, where people actually try to hack into your network properly to see if you're vulnerable. And on the report, they'd actually used the wrong domain name. So this just highlights the fact that not everybody that's offering advice on Cyber Essentials necessarily does a great job. So be careful who you use. And a few weeks back, we deal with an architect's company for their telecoms, not their IT. I got an email from the senior partner, which was obviously a phishing email. I told them that I'd got that, and I said, "Have you got two-factor authentication set up? And they said no. I said, well, you need to get it set up immediately. Who's your IT company? Have you not looked at Cyber Essentials? And they said, yes, we're Cyber Essentials accredited. And I said, well, why haven't you got two-factor authentication in set up then? And they said it was an option. So, you know, that's really just bad advice from the IT company that took them through Cyber Essentials. So a few things really on that is, you may be very happy with your IT person, and we're not pitching to take over your IT support here at all, but just ask yourself, is the person or is the company proactive? You know, do they come to you and have they suggested they review your cyber security? Have they suggested you look at Cyber Essentials? If not, why not? You know, we find a lot of IT companies are very set in their ways. They always do what they've always done. They might not come forward with the latest stuff that's going to make things better for you. So having a fresh pair of eyes look at what they've set up for you is often a good idea. And actually, we do work alongside customers, IT support companies, where perhaps they don't have that set of skills. They just have maybe more general skills, and they maybe not even looked at cybersecurity to the depth that Cyber Essentials will look at it. So, you know, it's worth asking them the question. And if you do ask them, you know, are we secure? How do you know what they're telling you is correct? You know, have they provided evidence? So this is all worth looking at. So Cyber Essentials, the next steps for you, if you want to look at this more professionally, is discuss it with your IT experts, as I've said. Find someone with the skills and experience if you don't think that they have the skills and experience. Do your research for yourself. Download the resources from the Cyber Essentials website, which is freely available. Just search Cyber Essentials Government and you'll find it. And take some action, because you know, it's so important. And if you have any questions, you can email us at helpme@tecwork.co.uk or give us a call or visit our website, and we'd be very, very happy to hear from you. So thank you. Hope that's helpful. Nick Brandon from tecwork. I'm going to end this recording now. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.